it may all come down to the Hoosier state. In less than 24 hours, Indiana voters heading to the polls in a primary that could be make or break for candidate Ted Cruz. 57 Republican delegates up for grabs. This as a new NBC Wall Street Journal poll shows frontrunner Donald Trump up by a commanding 15 points over the Texas senator. On Friday, Cruz declared the nomination will be decided in Indiana. But by Sunday, he had changed his tune a bit. He appeared, Senator Cruz, on Fox News Sunday saying this.
I agree that Indiana is incredibly important. I think regardless of what happens in Indiana, Donald Trump is not getting to 1237. No one's getting to 1237. We're headed to a contested convention. I'm going to have a ton of delegates at that convention. Donald's going to have a ton of delegates.
But if he beats you,
and it's going to be a battle to see who can earn a majority. Of course not.
Meantime, Donald Trump telling a boisterous crowd on Sunday that he can wrap up the nomination with a win tomorrow, allowing him to turn his attention to bigger things.
If we win Indiana, it's over, okay? If we win Indiana, it's over. And we're going to get there. I shouldn't say this because it takes away your incentive. We're going to get there anyway. But if we win Indiana, most people think that they quit the race. And then we can focus on crooked Hillary. Please, let's focus on Hillary.
All right, so Ted Cruz, we know, David, has been pulling out all the stops. He himself, he says, I've been barnstorming in the state. He's got his family. He's on the bus. He's going everywhere. Initially said this is a make-or-break moment. He's got to win Indiana, but he has changed his tune a bit.
Well, he has. He sounds more desperate than ever. I mean, calling Donald Trump, I think on another show he called him evil. And some of his supporters are also sounding desperate. Like you hear Lindsey Graham saying that if Trump is elected, we'll have another 9/11. I mean, this is really desperate. I think it's turning a lot of people off. I don't usually quote the New York Times, but they had a piece talking about how a lot of those delegates from Colorado and other places that Cruz thought he had, he doesn't. They're beginning to have qualms now. It's too early to say that they're backing off of him completely. But I think that desperation, the sound of desperation, his voice and his supporters' voices, is turning a lot of people off.
All right, so you're nodding your head, Harris. You're keeping track of the delegate count, the numbers involved here. Is this a make-or-break moment for Senator Cruz?
So just to complete your thought on that, the New York Times article talked about a softening for Ted Cruz among the 2,472 delegates that would be potentially up for grabs in the Republican Party. So that's troublesome for him. But here's the other part that's kind of tricky. Another report is out today saying that John Kasich basically is locking up most of the delegates in Indiana. That he's not even deploying a ground game traditionally and going and knocking on doors. He's just going after the delegate count. That's troubling for Cruz because I thought they had a deal.
Right. They do have a deal. They do, in fact. And you're right. Kasich still has a ground crew there in Indiana. It's not quite as robust as Cruz is, but he has personally stepped aside. He is not campaigning in the state. And it's definitely a tricky alliance, which, you know, obviously at this point it doesn't appear to be working. Donald Trump has almost an 8-point lead, according to the Real Clear average, the 15-point lead in that NBC Wall Street Journal poll that you pointed out, Sandra. And Cruz has really imploded since Wisconsin. And on my FBN show tonight, I'm going to talk about how Cruz needed to maintain that strategy from Wisconsin, very strong endorsements, solid ground game, which he has, but he also needs Trump to make those missteps. Trump has not been
By the way,
doing
I forgot the name of your show.
Oh, it's called
Nice
Kennedy.
plug.
Oh,
Nice wow.
Yeah.
That's why I love him,
All
by
right,
the way.
we're going from one money to another money. Melissa Francis, the Cruz-Kasich alliance, Donald Trump, he continues to hammer on this. And he actually was heard saying that the people of Indiana are smart. They don't go for this. But this latest polling coming out of the Wall Street Journal, the same one we're citing, the 15-point lead, 58% of likely Republican primary voters in Indiana say they disapprove of that alliance. Will it play a part in the turnout in the state?
I mean, it has played right into the Trump narrative. I mean, the problem with this strategy was that if you're going to do it, you had to be twice as strong. Because if it didn't work, you were going to look 8 times as weak. And that's exactly what has happened. If this is them banding together, boy, that's not a good sign at all. And it's really played into that narrative. Trump needs to keep them in the game because he talks about people ganging up on him, the establishment, this and that. He needs people to be acting that out, and these two have done that for him perfectly.
And as far as uniting the party, Kennedy, Harris, we have heard Donald Trump say, hey, look, that's my goal, but if it doesn't happen, I'll still win.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that in a second. I just wanted to get back to that point about John Kasich. I mean, remember that last delegate count, John Kasich had fewer delegates than Marco Rubio, who's no longer in the race. If he actually scoops more delegates in Indiana, that is just a death knell for the campaign of Ted Cruz. So you know he's thinking about that today. And I guess the big question is, what will this upcoming event that he has with Governor Pence look like? Hillary Clinton took on Governor Pence just a couple of hours ago on the subject of abortion, so she's hitting Ted Cruz from that direction through Governor Pence. This is a sticky time.
Way,
it's a make or break moment.
A number of pieces coming out today and over the weekend about how Trump can beat Hillary by people that were skeptical of that point. Now that he has begun to turn at least maybe 25% of his attention on Hillary, just Hillary, a lot of people say, look at the poll numbers are looking a lot better for him on one-on-one against Hillary. So I think that is also helping to turn a lot of those delegates around that had been professing their faith to Cruz. They're beginning to think, gee, maybe Trump could do it.
But there was a poll this weekend that actually had him pulling ahead of her, and certainly much closer within the margin of error and more than one outlier poll.
Right.
All right. Well, make sure you stick with Fox News all day tomorrow. We will be covering the battle for Indiana from the poll openings to the final results. Live coverage all day long and late into the evening right here on FNC.
All right, so we're going to get to that point that Sandra was just making. Donald Trump is raising some eyebrows after claiming that he does not actually have to bring the Republican Party together in order to win the White House. We've heard it first as he was campaigning in California. Then he said it again yesterday in Indiana. Watch.
I'll tell you this. They said to me, well, if it doesn't come together, does that mean you can't win? No, I think I can win. What? Do you think it helps to have Jeb Bush? What's that worth, like 2 votes? Jeb and his wife. Jeb and his wife. Seriously. I don't think it matters. But it would be nice to have the Republican Party come together. With that being said, I think I'll win anyway. I think I'll win New York State. I think I'll win Michigan.
Melissa, he seems pretty confident. I know in Terre Haute he said, look, if we win here, it's over, okay?
What you just heard there, that's a good negotiation. Remember, we said it before. You can't negotiate effectively unless you're willing to stand up and walk away from the table. So he said, I'm going to win whether we're united or not. I don't really care. I don't need these people. That's a sign I'm not going to do anything to get you on my side. Of course, that's a lot of talk. I'm not sure that's what's going on behind the scenes. Also, I mean, he's a marketing genius. He puts his finger on the pulse of every single moment. And he knows that having the party on board would be death to him. I mean, at least to outsiders, the way it looks. He probably needs the infrastructure. He needs the reality of it. But he doesn't want his voters to think that he's butting up to the rest of the party.
So, Kennedy, is this where a man like Paul Manafort really comes in? Like, you can be whatever you want to be right here, but he's got you over there.
I think what it says to me is really what Melissa was saying, that, you know, this line of logic appeals so much to those independent voters who don't want to be boxed in. And you talk about this 58% of Indiana voters who are resentful of that Kasich-Cruz alliance. They don't want to be told how to vote. They don't want to be told how to vote by issue, by party, or by candidate. They're going to make their independent decisions themselves, whether or not they are registered unaffiliated voters. And I think that's what he's doing. And it is far more strategic than some impromptu throwaway line that we think we see from the campaign. And yes, I think that is Paul Manafort crafting that message from within.
Behind the scenes. And remember, the Trump campaign is now having those weekly on-the-Hill meetings with lawmakers. It started out with those who supported him. Now he's trying to bring on board those who don't. Sandra, I want to ask you about this. And David, you alluded to this reporting that shows how close Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are. So one of the articles, and I think you and I both read the same thing, showed that if you take out the number of people who say they just won't vote at all, he actually pulls ahead of Hillary Clinton. So if you factor them in, they're kind of head-to-head. Those people who say, oh, we're just going to stay home. But if everybody ends up going, and the numbers that we usually see, 50 to 60% of registered voters actually head to the polls in a general election, he pulls ahead.
I think as far as the polling and the matchup against Hillary Clinton, there's going to be a lot of time for that. That's right. A lot of time for that to change. But that being said, I wonder about endorsements. After we just saw the endorsement for Ted Cruz by the Indiana governor, that tepid endorsement, at the same time he was complimenting Donald Trump as a candidate. Yeah, I just wonder how important that is going to be going forward. Donald Trump saying there are some people I honestly don't want their endorsement. So as you get more Republicans who say, I got to back the front runner, I got to back the winner, what's that going to look like?
I have to allude back to something that you folks don't remember because I'm the old guy here. Ronald Reagan also faced a very establishment-oriented Republican Party that hated him, that didn't want him, but he managed to bring them into the fold. He managed to turn them once he proved to them that he could get the votes, particularly the crossover votes, the Democratic votes. There's got to be a time when Donald Trump takes that turn, when he takes all that the Republican Party, because as stuffy and establishment and out of date as it is, it can be used to his tremendous credit in November if he wants to. If Ronald Reagan was able to do it, maybe they're just two different personalities. I don't know. But if Ronald Reagan was able to do it, I think Donald Trump can, and I think he will before November.
That's interesting. Rasmussen Reports did a phone survey that found that Donald Trump appeals to more Democrats than Hillary Clinton appeals to GOP voters by almost twice the percentage.
Huge.
Exactly what you're talking about.
Well, very, very quickly, it has to be somewhat troublesome for the Democratic Party that they've had much lower turnout in these Democratic primaries than on the Republican side.
Yeah.
So if you're seeing this passion and an electorate that is really passionate about these candidates, that could be one of the things that falls in his favor. He's got other problems, as we've talked about.
An electorate that's electrified.
Like grease lightning.
And on the eve of the all-important Indiana primary now, we will be sure to get you to watch Sean Hannity's interview with the frontrunner Donald Trump. That's tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern, right here on the FNC.